happening here? What are the Jesuits doing? They're moving away from doctrine. They're moving away from the authority of the Pope. They're saying, let's not discuss so much doctrine or the authority of the Pope. We need a new focus. We need to win over the socialist, communist nations of the world. And we're not going to do it with the traditional talking points, because that's not what the globalist powers want to hear. So Malachi Martin wrote this book, The Jesuits. You know, I had this book for years in my library. Just kind of sat there. Then about 6 months ago, you know, I was looking through my books. I have most of them in boxes now because I don't have any place to put them. But I was looking through the books that I have on my bookcases, and I saw this one, The Jesuits. I'd never read it. I said, I think I'll give it a whirl. It's a big book, probably about 500 pages. So I started reading it. And so I said, when was this written? So I went and looked, 1987. I said, now wait a minute. Everything he said in 1987 is happening now. Not that he was a prophet, but that he's a staunch Roman Catholic, and the Roman Catholic Church has been around for 1,500 years, and they can read what's going to happen by the law of cause and effect because they've seen it happen before. So he wrote this book, and in this book he was aghast. This Jesuit, Malachi Martin, was totally distressed by the new focus of the Jesuits, of the own order that he belonged to. In fact, eventually he resigned from the Jesuit order. He was so disgusted. And in the book he documents in minute detail the shift of the Jesuits to totally transform and change the Roman Catholic Church's talking points. Now let's talk about Pope Benedict's retirement. Most people believe that Benedict XVI retired from the papal throne because of the sexual abuse scandal of children. So the Roman Catholic Church wanted to get rid of him because he was involved in the scandal. They wanted to start afresh. However, that was not the real reason. In order to carry forward the agenda, the new agenda of the Jesuits, they needed a liberal pope that would not focus on the orthodoxy of church dogmas or the authority of the Pope, but someone who would please the politicians of the world and would make it easier for Protestants to join the papacy, because Benedict had said during his pontificate that the Protestant churches are not true churches. Well, that went over like a lead balloon among Protestants. It was necessary to have a pope that would implement the new agenda of the Jesuits. Benedict did not resign of his own free will. The papal talking points needed to change, and as long as Benedict was there, the talking points were not going to change. It's interesting, Malachi Martin wrote this on page 17 of his book. Though the movement of the socialists has been global since its inception, it was above all in Latin America that the strange alliance between Jesuits and Marxists gathered its first practical momentum. It was there, in Latin America, that this new Jesuit mission, entailing as it does nothing less than the transformation of the socio-political face of the West. So what is the purpose of the Jesuits? To change the transformation of the socio-political face of the West. Eliminate this idea that a nation needs to look out for itself. Internationalism, globalism, everyone working together. He continued writing in other Central American countries. Meanwhile, listen carefully, Jesuits not only participated in guerrilla training of Marxist cadres, but some of the Jesuits became guerrilla fighters themselves. Regarding the Jesuit war against church dogmas, Martin wrote this: "There is not one major dogma or one capital moral law of Roman Catholicism that has not been challenged, both challenged and denied by individual Jesuits." Once again, there is not one major dogma, we call them doctrines, or one capital moral law of Roman Catholicism that has not been both challenged and denied by individual Jesuits, beginning with Jesuits of the highest rank and the most honored stature. One of the great theologians of the 20th century in Roman Catholicism was Karl Rahner, considered probably the greatest Roman Catholic scholar of the 20th century. Notice what he wrote. Jesuit. He's a Jesuit. He wrote, "To achieve Christian unity," this is Martin writing about what Karl Rahner believed. "To achieve Christian unity," he said, "it was necessary to drop all insistence on papal infallibility as a dogma." Drop the idea that the Pope is infallible. "And to drop insistence as well on all other doctrines about the Roman Pontiff and Roman Catholicism that had been defined and proposed by popes since the 4th century." Get rid of what? Get rid of papal infallibility, the authority of the papal chair. Get rid of the doctrines. Don't emphasize them. Why? Because if the papacy emphasizes those, there's no unity with the rulers of the world, or with Protestantism for that matter. Now our time is up. Don't miss the next segment, because I'm going to talk about the first Jesuit pope. And I'm going to talk to you about who the Father General of the Jesuits is today. See, this is a spider web where each part is joined together with the other part. What Malachi Martin wrote 33 years ago is transpiring right before our eyes. So at this time, I think we're going to have a Q&A for about a half an hour. And then we will continue with the next segment. You can be thankful that I don't charge my services on Sabbath. Just kidding.
I believe we're going to have 2 or 3 mics. Are we going to have the stands like we talked about? Because we wanted to have them come to where we were rather than running mics all over the sanctuary. So raise your hand. I guess they've changed that plan. So raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll get a mic to you.
Can you further explain it? I'm not clear really what a Jesuit is. I know you say it's an order, but I guess I don't get the concept of it. Is it's a philosophy, and somebody says, "Yeah, I think I believe that. Let me sign on," or and I just guess I don't quite understand what it is.
It's a class that you do. It's kind of like belonging to a club. Basically they study in Jesuit universities and then they apply to join the Jesuit order.
So is it more educators, more so than others?
Well, there are different schools within the Roman Catholic Church. You have the Augustinians, you have the Dominicans.
Okay.
These are religious orders within the Roman Catholic Church. You have the Jesuits. You have different orders, or we would call them different clubs in the Roman Catholic Church. And of course, the most dangerous of those are the Jesuits, because they're the oldest and they have the most experience, and they're the ones that are driving the change in the Roman Catholic Church. So they are, it's hard to describe, other than say that the Roman Catholic Church is composed of many different clubs, and individuals decide to join those clubs. And so the Jesuits are an order of the Roman Catholic Church.
But for instance, if you have the cardinals, do they all belong to one of these clubs, or are there some that are just, no, I don't want to belong?
No, the cardinals belong to different orders in the Catholic Church. The cardinals are not all Jesuits. But the cardinals in the great majority today are liberals. Theologically liberal, and liberal in terms of the organization of the Catholic Church. The Jesuits have had great influence, even on the other groups within the Roman Catholic Church.
Okay, we got another one here.
Pastor Bohr, I've always read, considering the Jesuits, that they were in many ways connected with the Counter-Reformation, and that was one of the reasons for their origin. Could you talk a little bit about that connection?
The main reason for the establishment of the Jesuit order was to counteract the Protestant Reformation. The Protestant Reformation began, the date that is usually given is 1517, when Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the cathedral door in Wittenberg. And Loyola established the Jesuit order in 1534. So you can tell, very close afterwards. And the explicit purpose of the Jesuit order was to counteract the growing Protestant menace. In fact, you can go to St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and there's a statue of Loyola, and he's trampling on the head of a Protestant. I've seen that personally. So basically, the idea of the Jesuits is to eliminate Protestantism. And, you read I'm going to read a statement by Ellen White a little bit later, where she says that basically they infiltrate the educational systems, the governments, the medical world, the scientific world, all over the world, to leaven the world so that the world will go along with their philosophy. So yes, it was established directly to counteract the Protestant Reformation.
So you were talking about the fact that a disbelief in the literal creation account and evolution was one of the things that attacked was the need for a savior. You went through a series of logical steps as to how that happened. So if that's the case, and if the papacy is now coming out and saying, we believe in evolution, which is obviously what they're doing, what reason do they give for needing a savior, or is it just political expediency to keep on track with their agenda?
Okay, that's a very good question, and let me answer this way. The Roman Catholic Church, by its religion, deceives the people, and by its state aspect, deceives the political leaders. So the ceremonies of the Roman Catholic Church are to captivate the multitudes into leading them to believe that these religious leaders believe, that they're sinners and that Jesus died on the cross for them and so on. They don't believe it personally. Okay? That aspect is to deceive the masses, and they've got them pretty well deceived. The idea, for example, you're supposed to pray to Mary for favors and so on. These liberals, they don't believe in that. But they talk the talk because that's what they want the people to believe, to be loyal to the church. On the other hand, the state aspect of the Vatican is to be able to have relations with the governments of the world to influence them to do what the Roman Catholic Church wants. The Roman Catholic Church is a hybrid. It's a union of church and state, which is very dangerous. It deceives both groups by being a state and church.
Other than that they want power?
I believe in the depths of their hearts, they're atheists. But they would never say it, because if they said they were atheists, what would happen with the populace? What is this all about? They're saying that they're atheists? Come on, what is the reason for all the ceremonies and all the teachings and all the prayers to Mary if there's no such thing as a God? So they have to provide a facade. By the way, let me just share this interesting testimony for you. This coming Thursday, I'm going to be traveling to Spain. I'll be speaking at a church there on the book of Daniel. For the last 6 months or so, I've been corresponding with a Roman Catholic priest. And some of you probably received our fundraising letter in your mailboxes if you're on our mailing list. And this priest has been strongly impacted by the Adventist message. He's been watching on YouTube. He's been watching Walter Fite. He's been watching Bachelor. In the last 2 or 3 months, he's been watching the materials for Secrets Unsealed. So he wrote an email. He says, I believe Ellen White is God's prophet for the last days. I believe that the dead are dead. I believe that the Sabbath is the day that we're supposed to keep as the day of rest. He says, I believe in the 1888 message. And I know what the Roman Catholic Church is trying to do by introducing spiritual formation and contemplative prayer. I mean, this guy knows more about Adventism than the Adventist Church. And he has requested baptism. So one of the reasons I'm going is a week from this coming Thursday, we're going to be baptizing this Roman Catholic priest there in Spain. So not only are the laity watching the programming, the conservative Adventist programming, but also people, intelligent people. I mean, I'm not saying that people that haven't studied, they're not intelligent. They have a practical intelligence. People who are, who have studied and have advanced degrees, they're starting to come to the conclusion that, where they're at is not the right place, that they need to look for something that's better. There's another individual, and I told this story also in our latest fundraising letter. There's this individual in Colombia who also watched our programming, and he contacted the pastor of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, studied our message, became an Adventist, a very well-to-do individual, very well financially. And he has requested that I go back to a city on the border between Colombia and Ecuador. He says, I'm going to rent the most luxurious hall in the city. I'm going to pay all of your expenses, and I want you to present a series mainly for the upper class, the higher class people. And so later on this year, I'm going to be traveling to Colombia to do that. This is an individual who basically handles millions of dollars and has embraced the Adventist message. And so not only among the common people, but also among those who are highly educated, there's a great interest on the basis of what they see happening in the world. And that's the reason we exist as Secrets Unsealed. We only exist for one reason, that is to proliferate the message, the present-day message, present truth message of the Adventist Church. That's the reason for our existence. Yes?
How do the Freemasons fit into all this?
Well, the Freemasons are also a secret society, just like the Opus Dei and the Jesuits. I've heard that the Jesuits and the Freemasons do not like each other much. So I don't know exactly, because they're secret societies, we don't know exactly what links really exist between them and how they consider one another, other than the rumors that you hear. But Ellen White does warn us totally against all secret societies. She says we should not join secret societies. And some people make it a point to say that where Ellen White is buried, there's an obelisk. And an obelisk is a Freemason symbol. And so they say that Ellen White was a Freemason because there's an obelisk at her sepulcher. Well, folks, Ellen White has many places in her writings where she condemns the Freemasons by name. Furthermore, in the cemetery where she's buried, Oak Hill Cemetery in Battle Creek, there are bunches of monuments that are obelisks of people that were never Freemasons. Simply, an obelisk was the popular thing to put on a gravesite at that time. It has no connection with secret societies. So I wish I had a better answer, but because they're secret societies, we don't know all of the inner workings that they have, one with another. Any other questions? Okay.
It sounds like from your description, John Paul I and John Paul II are kind of cut from the same cloth. I'm wondering, why was one put out of the way after 33 days and the other one was pope for, I think, 23 years?
Because I think that the Jesuits, during the pontificate of John Paul II, still did not have a complete and strong foothold in the Roman Catholic papacy. I think it's a process that took time. And, Benedict was there for several years, and the Jesuits had gained enough power at that point, enough adherents, to really exercise their clout in electing, getting him to retire and to elect a Jesuit pope. And by the way, even though Benedict XVI promised that he was going to go into the shadows and he would not be seen anymore, recently, I'm going to share this in a few moments, Benedict XVI is at war with Francis I on the issue of celibacy. Because, you know, the present Pope has shown himself open to the possibility of the bishops in Amazonia, that is in the Amazon, to be married, because they can't find enough male priests. So, you know, the fact is that they did not have their full strength at that point, but eventually they had enough strength where they said, let's just get rid of this Pope, force him to retire, and elect a Pope more to our liking. Yes?
I had a question. I heard that the Jesuits, priests, got pretty much a foul on everybody in the world, especially in America. Is that true?
The Jesuit priests what?
They have a record, a foul pretty much on everybody in America. Is that true? A record or a foul?
Well, I've never seen it. Maybe they do. You know, I don't know. You know, the bottom line is that we don't know all the inner workings of the Jesuits, but by what we're seeing, we can know what the general direction of what they want is. We can see what they're working towards. They are a secret society. So a lot of the things that are going on we don't know. Like people who say, well, the Adventist Church is infiltrated by Jesuits. The Catholic Church has planted Jesuits in the Adventist Church. Well, who are they? You know, we don't know. So let's not obsess about, well, is this one a Jesuit? Maybe that's one a Jesuit there. I'm more concerned about what they're teaching than trying to discover if they're a Jesuit that's been planted by the Roman Catholic Church in the Adventist Church. We can get caught up so much in conspiracy theories that we lose our focus. And by the way, what I'm sharing with you is not a conspiracy theory. It's all very well documented with the sources that I've mentioned, as well as many other sources that I'll be sharing when I publish the newsletter articles. There'll be at least 2 successive articles on this particular point. Anyone else? Okay, way back there.
Yes, Pastor. John Paul and Francis, I've heard that they're called the White Pope. Is there a Black Pope, and is the Black Pope a military arm of the Jesuits?
Okay, good question. The Black Pope is called black because he dresses in black. He wears a black robe. The White Pope puts on a white robe. So it has to do with what they're clothed with. But the real powerful individual in the Catholic Church is the Black Pope, which is the Father General of the Jesuit order. And I'll be talking a little bit about the present Father General of the Jesuit order in our second session this afternoon. Very interesting. He's obviously a Jesuit, but can you guess what country he's from? Venezuela. Interesting. We'll come to that a little bit later on. And now I'm going to tell you what Arturo Sosa Abascal, which is the name of this new Father General, I'm going to show you, being a Jesuit, that he has this very idea that doctrine, we can't really know what we're supposed to believe in terms of doctrine. That doctrine is not set in concrete and is not unchangeable, but it changes with the times. I'm going to read you statements from him where, you know, he's... and what has he said about in Venezuela, where you have hundreds of political prisoners that are being tortured in prison, people who are starving to death, eating from the garbage? What does he say? Well, there needs to be a dialogue between the communists or the leaders and the opposition, just dialogue. But he condemns nothing of what's going on, which is very interesting, because he's a communist. And the government of Venezuela is communist. So birds of a feather flock together. Okay, any other question? Where are we? Over here.
Yes, it's interesting that we have a Jesuit pope and a Jesuit vice president. Do you know much about the background of Vice President Pence? Any association?
I'm not sure that Pence is a Jesuit. Maybe educated, but I think that he's a Protestant. I don't think he's a Jesuit. I think I know he's not a Jesuit. President Trump is a Presbyterian. Quotation marks. But most of the influential people that he has surrounded himself are Catholics, including Bohr, the Attorney General, and Cipollone, who's going to be defending him in the impeachment trial in the Senate, is also Roman Catholic. And most of the media has been taken over by Roman Catholics as well. And there, by the way, there are two branches in the media also. There's a conservative branch and a liberal branch. The conservative branch is Fox News. The liberal branch is what President Trump refers to as fake news. And by the way, most of the commentators in both wings are Roman Catholics. But the Roman Catholics at Fox News, they're at odds with the Pope almost on everything, because they're on the conservative side, which is in the minority in the Catholic Church. There is a minority of probably 20 to 25% of Roman Catholics that despise Francis I. In fact, when we were in Philadelphia, there was a group of conservative Catholics that were going from person to person to sign a petition for Pope Francis to outlaw abortion. And I got to talk to some of them. They said, this Pope, he is the Antichrist in the Roman Catholic Church, one of them told me, because we can't recognize our church. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? You know, what's happening in the Catholic Church is happening in the Adventist Church, is happening in the political world. Because the church is a reflection of society. Unfortunately, instead of transforming society, the church reflects society. That's sad. Okay, yes.
With evolution, death is a requirement. You can't evolve without death. And no matter how you spin or twist or turn or spiritualize creation, death is not part of it. So how does a person who believes in creation, in evolution, deal with the aspect of death?
That's one of the big dilemmas that they face. Because the Bible says that death is a result of sin. And because of death, which is the result of sin, you need somebody to save you from death, which is the Redeemer. But if there was death long before sin, the link between sin and death is broken. Because evolution doesn't function on the basis, well, you're going to get a Redeemer from death. No, what happens is through evolution, eventually death will be overcome by the process of evolution. So it's something that they are not able to answer. The break between the idea of sin, death, and therefore the need of redemption. They're irreconcilable, like that newspaper article said. You can't reconcile them. It's impossible.
You mentioned earlier in the presentation that removing the literal meaning of the creation week opens the door to interpretation of multiple things like heterosexual marriage and, of course, the identity crisis issues both in Canada, the United States, and around the world. I guess my question is two-pronged. Number one, what's your insight into the, just shortly, of course, into the factors that kind of influence the U.S. Supreme Court to legalize gay marriage? And number two, is there something like intellectual suicide going on the American colleges and universities campuses because of the embracing the LGBT ideology? And can you just give us a little bit of insight in those two issues? Because they are related to the interpretation of the first week of creation, in a way.
Right. Our public universities have been totally overtaken by liberalism. In other words, in favor of LGBT, in favor of communism and socialism, in favor of LGBTQ, etc. So basically, a whole young generation is rising in the United States that has only the view, they don't know anything about the founding of the United States, the principles upon which this nation was established. And therefore, they've been given the idea that this country is bad, that the system of capitalism is bad, and that the principles upon which this nation was built are bad. And so it's like trying to catch the wind. It's an impossible situation as long as the universities are teaching this. Many of the teachers are Marxists. They're socialists. You know, you take, for example, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They profess religion, but they're really communists in their outlook. Because what happens is, socialism, basically, if you want to contrast between socialism and capitalism, socialism believes that the government should do everything. Capitalism believes that individuals should be the builders of society. And so, this idea, well, we're going to give free education, and we're going to give free health care, and we're going to give free this and free that, $1,000 a month to everybody, and so on. If I was a young person, I'd say, hallelujah. I'll have $1,000 to spend. But they don't realize that what's going to happen is going to lead the country to go broke. I mean, Medicare for all, just look at the price tag. And maybe that's the entire purpose. There's a purpose behind this, and that is to take the United States to the point where it's bankrupt, because that way the system can change. So we live in perilous times. What was the other point?
The influences that influenced the United States Supreme Court to legalize gay marriage and start leaning toward the socialist agenda.
Okay, when the Supreme Court approved gay marriage, two of the justices that we have now were not there. Kavanaugh was not there, and Gorsuch. They were not members of the court. Basically, the court was 4-4 with a swing vote which leaned liberal. So I believe that that's the reason why gay marriage was approved as constitutional. I'm not so sure that that would happen now. We live in dangerous times when it comes to the Supreme Court. Because right now, this is supposedly a Protestant country. But right now we have 5 justices that are Roman Catholics, one who grew up Catholic, Gorsuch. He grew up Catholics and he attends the Episcopalian Church, and we have 3 Jews. There are no Protestants on the Supreme Court. Now what happens if Judge Ginsburg should pass away? She's been sick with pancreatic cancer. What happens if she passes away? And we have an election of a 7th leaning Roman Catholic. It's a scary thought. The most powerful branch of government is the judicial branch. We have 3 branches of government in the United States. We have the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. The judicial is primarily the Supreme Court. Which is the most powerful of the 3? The Supreme Court. Why? Because Congress can write a law, but if somebody contests its constitutionality, and the court says that the law that Congress wrote is unconstitutional, the law does not become law, or the law is overturned. So, let me ask you, would a national Sunday law be unconstitutional? Clearly unconstitutional? Congress shall make no law establishing religion or forbidding the free exercise thereof. Would establishing Sunday as a national day of worship be establishing religion? Any thinking person in the world would say yes. But let me ask you this. What if the Supreme Court should declare constitutional what is unconstitutional? That's what's going to happen. Notice, there's not going to necessarily be an amendment. There might be an amendment to the Constitution, but there's really no need for an amendment because the Supreme Court can say that Sunday laws are constitutional, even though we know that they're not constitutional. That's the reason why the beast of Revelation 13, it says that it has two horns like a lamb, which professes civil and religious liberty, but it speaks like a dragon. In other words, what's going to happen is the Sunday law is going to be drawn up by Congress, and the United States is not going to get rid of the idea of civil and religious liberty, but in its actions, it is going to contradict its profession of standing for civil and religious liberty. So would anti-Sabbath laws be unconstitutional too? Ellen White says that there's not only going to be a national Sunday law, there's going to be anti-Sabbath keeping laws. Would that be unconstitutional? Yes, because the Constitution says, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof, which means that you can keep the Sabbath if you want. So a Sunday law would be established in religion, and an anti-Sabbath law would be forbidding the free exercise of religion. And what's going to happen is the Supreme Court is going to declare that both of those laws are constitutional, even though we know that they're unconstitutional. That's the reason why this beast has two horns like a lamb, speaks like a dragon. It contradicts in its speech what it professes to be.
One more over here, I think, and then we need to be heading into a break. If you want to give him a break before he has to speak for the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah, give me a break.
This is more of a practical question. Many of us are visiting this church today, but we are scattered about throughout the region. And this is, you talked a lot about earlier, about some of the challenges with our universities and university ministers being trained elsewhere outside of our seminaries and then coming back. What practical advice can you give anyone here today that recognizes that perhaps the minister that stands in the pulpit with a traditional love for the church, yet you're hearing things that are contrary to what we've always believed? What would you recommend as practical advice for those members?
I would recommend what Jesus recommended. First, go and speak with that person individually. If they don't listen to you, take it to the elders of the church. If they don't listen to the elders of the church, take it to the church board. And if the church board doesn't listen, then you've done your work and there's nothing more to do. We need to follow the process of going to the person first and talking to them individually and trying to win that brother or sister to the biblical view. But we are living in very perilous times, folks. All kinds of winds of doctrine are attempting to enter the Adventist church. And we need to know what we believe and why we believe it. We need to be firmly grounded on present truth. And so it's vitally important for us to study, to know what we believe, to share it, and to speak up when we see our church deviating from the truth. One of the reasons why we have problems in the church is because people say, well, I know that that's wrong, but I don't want to make waves. I don't want to cause a conflict in the church. So people stay quiet. We need to speak up. Be nice. Be nice, be courteous. Don't be mean, because conservatives are considered mean. And many times conservatives are mean in the way that they come across. So we need to be kind and loving, but we need to be firm when it comes to the message that God has given our church.
Kind and loving. Quick, we got to be considerate here his time as well.
So you need to be read the Bible so you cannot be deceived. And Mason is a secret society, and be careful with the night Columbus. And like you say, it's everywhere. It also is involved in families too. So we need to pray to God to lead us to the right path.
Amen. Amen. We need more prayer, more Bible study, and more witnessing.
conservatives, we want to be kind but straightforward too. We need to be considerate of our time, of letting him get a little rest. So we got one more question, and if we can be quick, so we can get a little bit of break here. Be nice and concise. There you go.
Well, my question is, I read a book that I got from the library a while back called In the Closet of the Vatican, and the subtitle was Power, Homosexuality, and Hypocrisy. It's written by a man named Frederick Martel, who is apparently an investigative journalist. And he spent 4 years traveling through Europe and spent a great deal of time at the Vatican and gained entrance to the inner sanctum of the Vatican and was able to get a lot of people to talk. And he learned that they feel that probably 75% of the priests, especially in the upper echelons of the church, are gay. But of course, what's preached by those people is very homophobic, and and they're very anti-LGBT, and I just wondered, how that plays into the tack the Jesuits are taking, and I think it also, according to this author, had something to do with Benedict XVI's resignation too.
Oh, absolutely. Benedict was too conservative for the Catholic Church, for what the Jesuits were trying to do.
Yeah, these people were mostly, it was mostly John Paul II and Benedict that the book addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's another evidence of what I'm sharing here, that's what's happening in the Roman Catholic Church. By the way, I'm going to share with you some very interesting quotations. In one of the trips that Pope Francis I took, he did a news conference on the plane. Somebody asked him what he thought about marriage between a man and a man and a woman and a woman. He says, "Who am I to judge?" That tells everything of what he believes concerning gay marriage. He's in favor of gay marriage. He is in favor of women priests. He doesn't openly say it, because there would be a revolution by the conservatives, but he firmly in his heart believes in a non-celibate priesthood, and he believes in the ordination of women priests as well. He is a Jesuit of the most radical kind, socialist, he's made ecumenical trips. He's made trips to Buddhist nations, Hindu nations, Muslim nations, Christian nations, Catholic nations, and he's constantly saying we all need to come together. Lay aside our differences and come together. That is the new Jesuit model. See, the way they used to be, defend church doctrine, defend the authority of the Pope. No way to win over the rulers of the world. Or the scientists teaching creation, hello. Or Protestants, when you say, we got the truth. What Protestant's going to want to unite with them? Nobody. But if you can make the Roman Catholic Church palatable to all these groups, everything can synthesize.